Hey guys, I've got a quick video about tournament preparation, which is going to be useful or not depending on the kind of player you are, whether you're likely to take part in any tournaments in the future. But yeah, let's get right into it. So I want to go over the thinking involved in preparing your decks for a tournament, basically. And there's three like big aspects that we need to think about. So I'll go over those. The first one is going to be the general like strategy that you're going to employ during the tournament. So this is going to depend on the format, whether you have to bring 3, 4 decks, whether you have a ban or not on a faction or a leader. It's pretty important. Um, and yeah, I'll just there's three approaches within this 3-step sort of thing here. So the first approach to the general strategy in the tournament is you can bring decks that you feel are really strong in the current meta. On the ladder, that sort of thing. This is pretty, like, probably the most popular thing to do in tournaments is just bring what you think are the best decks overall. It's been seen in many, many tournaments, even the past tournament. Most of the players were operating on that strategy. The last Gwent Open, for example. Similarly, in Challenger, you had people playing just decks that they thought were the strongest overall. So yeah, that's a pretty common one to go with. If you don't know what else to do, you can go with that strategy. So the second one, we can bring a lineup which is countering one or more popular meta decks. Now this is going to be really useful if you think your opponent will be guaranteed to be running a certain deck. We saw JJ doing it in the most recent Gwent Open number 3, and he brought decks that countered consume very effectively, which meant he was pretty successful in that tournament, ended up winning it. So you can definitely counter decks if you think your opponent will be running them. And the third thing that we can do here is we can use a ban to basically enable any secret or hidden decks that aren't super playable on ladder or in the meta in general, but the ban can relieve some of that pressure that would normally be on that deck or archetype, and it can allow you to play that. Even a couple of decks as well, not just the one. Um, and I'm trying to think of examples of this, but honestly, it hasn't happened too much. General, just like spicy deck stuff, that kind of comes as a result of the ban enabling some riskier strategies or more different, ideas and archetypes. So it has been seen, but maybe not as common as the other two. Anyhow, each of these strategies also requires a certain meta to be possible, right? So you can't try to counter a deck if the meta is very unstable, if you don't know what your opponents are going to be bringing, that sort of thing. Likewise, it might not be the case that there are or that you have knowledge of any secret or hidden decks, so you might not be able to enable those with a ban if you don't have any. Now, this whole process here can be made, working out which strategy you want to go with, which decks are appropriate for those strategies by estimating the like favorability of all possible matchups in the current meta. So this deck is good against this deck's weak against this one, that sort of thing. You can even use like an Excel table, or like you can just write out a table from hand if that makes it easier. And that's going to help you identify, a deck which might be weak to being countered, or just decks that in general are going to be strong overall against the field. Now, of course, it's going to help a lot if you have experience, playing ladder, playing it against and with all of these possible meta decks before you start analyzing matchups and that sort of thing. Okay, so yeah, step one is going to be we're going to work out that general strategy out of the, 3 options we'll say here, okay? Now, after we picked a strategy, we should think about the order that we're going to ban the opponent's decks or leaders. So this is the priority with with which we ban one leader over another effectively. So for example, if you see that Henselt's the strongest leader against your lineup, followed by Calviet, you're always going to ban Henselt when you see him. And then if you don't see a Henselt, you'll ban the Calviet, and maybe there's like a third ban option or whatever. But usually there's one that takes priority, which you're going to ban in most cases, and that's going to support your general strategy overall, right? Now, knowing what's best to ban is hugely important in tournaments, and a good ban order can, it can improve your chances in tournaments by a huge amount. And another thing to note, which is pretty important, is that you can change your ban mid-tournament if you need to. Cole Moen actually did this in the second challenger, and he did pretty well doing that. And if you know your opponent's playing something spicy or different, like you see like a random Francesco or something, if you don't want to deal with that, you can always just ban it on the fly if you want to be safe. That is an option. Or if you know your opponent's renowned for playing a certain deck, then by all means deny them the comfort pick. So that's the second step. It's the ban order. We need to work that out, and that ties in pretty heavily with general strategy. Okay, so once you know which strategy you want to go with and you've decided a ban order, you can actually start building your decks, funnily enough. And you should make sure you know which matchups you need to win against opponents running a variety of strategies. So this is probably the most complex part of the process, really. It's knowing which are the like pivotal matches that if you win this, you're pretty likely to win, the set. And often that's going to revolve around you, winning with your worst deck. That's because that deck will often be a problem. You need to win with every deck once in Conquest format at least. So getting that one weak deck through might be where the pivotal matchups come in, right? And you can tech your decks in ways to win those pivotal matchups and catch opponents off guard as well. Obviously, there's some examples of this, like JJ in Gwent Open 3. He was teching really hard for Neckers, right, to counter Consume, which was in line with his game plan of picking a deck to counter and sticking with that. But a more subtle approach, or like example of this could be you assume people aren't going to be running weather, so you cut weather clears. Maybe you assume people are playing alchemy and Kahir in that deck, to revive their leader, so you play a Mandrake to deal with that sort of thing. So these little tech choices can improve matchups, improve the favorability, and therefore, help you win the pivotal matchups that you need to win. Okay, so that basically is in short the tournament preparation process. You got step one, which is general strategy that you want to employ. Step two is going to be your ban order, and step three is going to be teching your decks appropriately to try and win the most important matchups in any given set, which is probably the hardest one, the hardest part to work out. Anyway, I hope this is useful. I've been trying to build up some like resources for newer players and even some like higher level players to get into Gwent really competitively, and so this is part of that, and I hope it's useful. Anyway, that's me done for today. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.